Are you ready for Solo 2, The Return of Qi'ra? Just to be clear, that's not a Star Wars story that has been announced, and I'd lay odds it never will be, at least, not in movie form. Then again, Solo director Ron Howard did pointedly mention that a lot depended on fan enthusiasm for this corner of the galaxy and this set of characters in this time frame, so, you know, never. Tell me the odds, but let's be real, Solo tees up the next chapter in the life of Han's erstwhile girlfriend too perfectly not to follow in some form of ancillary media. If Star Wars wasn't a franchise, if Solo was landing in theaters without 41 years of baggage, that ending would have left one question in all our minds as we walked out of screenings. It wouldn't be about Han, Chewie or Lando, whose stories are all wrapped up with a neat bow. Vague mentions of a job on some planet called Tatooine don't count. What we as newbies would most care about is this: wait, who was that scary red dude with the laser sword, and what happens next with him in Qi'ra? Given Lucasfilm's love of tie-in stories, we will almost certainly find out the answer in some form, whether it be movie, book, comic book or animation series. Qi'ra is already getting her own Forces of Destiny short, and that is unlikely to be the last we'll see of Space Khaleesi. The sheer size of the story thread left dangling, complete with the sudden arrival of a fan-favorite villain, is almost comparable to those two other Star Wars movies with cliffhangers: The Empire Strikes Back and The Force Awakens. Which is especially strange given that they were episodes in a saga and Solo is supposedly a standalone, but we'll take all the Star Wars mystery we can get. For years fans drove themselves mad wondering whether Vader was indeed Luke's dad, or how Han was going to get out of that carbonite, and then years later, what Luke was going to say to Rey. Now here's what we need to know: whether Qi'ra is about to become the new apprentice to the Sith apprentice formerly known as Darth Maul. To explain what a sequel might look like, we need a quick recap of the somewhat confusing end of Solo, then an explanation for those wondering how the hell Maul managed to survive his definitive-looking bisection in 1999's Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. At the end of Solo, we have a dizzying series of double-crossings. Han's mentor Beckett betrays Han and Chewie dupe Crimson Dawn gang boss Dryden Voss. Qi'ra betrays Voss. Han gets the drop on Beckett by shooting first. This ends with the biggest betrayal of the movie, having promised she would now travel the galaxy with Han and sending him to pursue Beckett. Qi'ra is alone on Voss' giant space yacht. She takes Voss' big old Crimson Dawn ring from his corpse and uses it to open a holographic FaceTime with the shadowy figure Voss was working for. What this guy says, he's got a job for her, convinces Qi'ra to take the yacht to meet him, and leave her teen crush Han behind for good. He's one of the good guys, she said earlier, and she's... well, she's clearly badass to the bone. That makes her a perfect match for the shadowy figure, the villain formerly known as Darth Maul, listed in the Solo credits simply as Maul. He's lost his honorary Darth, his Sith title, and there's a reason for that: he was supposed to be dead. When last we saw Maul, played then and now by Ray Park, on the silver screen, he had been sliced in two by Obi-Wan Kenobi's lightsaber and was tumbling down a ventilation shaft. That, everyone assumed, was the end of a great character. By Episode 2, everyone had moved on, including Maul's boss, the soon-to-be Emperor Darth Sidious, who got a new apprentice, Darth Tyrannus Christopher Lee, with whom he conspired to start the Clone Wars. Sidious then made a prospective apprentice, Anakin Skywalker, kill Tyrannus before he could squeal about that bit of collusion. Anakin became Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith. George Lucas's plan was that there would only ever be two Sith at one time, a master and apprentice. That left no room for Maul. But once his Clone Wars animated series, 2008 to 2013, was up and running, Lucas decided it would be interesting to bring Maul back regardless, so in the 2012 season of the show, after we met his brother, Savage Opress, and Maul's mentor group of Force witches called Night Sisters, we learned that Maul had survived his duel with Obi-Wan on Naboo after all. He'd crawled into a trash compactor, escaped in a dumpster spaceship, yes, really, and ended up on a trash planet where he went briefly insane and had a few, special modifications. Maul began his second act with 8 robotic spider legs, but soon settled on just the 2. You can hear them clunk and hiss when he stands up to talk to Qi'ra. Maul then ignites his lightsaber for no reason, save for preventing this becoming the first Star Wars film in which no one waved around a laser sword. Maul's main motivation for returning was revenge on Obi-Wan. They have several showdowns. More lastingly, Maul decides to build an empire of his own, a criminal empire, with his brother as his major domo. He recruits galactic gangs that also get a shout-out in Solo, the Black Sun, the Pike family, to join something called the Shadow Collective. Maul then has a showdown with Darth Sidious, who is surprised to find his former apprentice alive but makes it clear, there can be only 2. No Darth for you. Sidious kills Opress, leaving Maul without a second in command. While we don't have word from Lucasfilm yet, this seems likely to be the point in the Star Wars timeline at which Qi'ra gets in touch with Maul. There's a job opening in his operation, and she's just the conniving individual to fill it. You see, there may have been more to that Clone Wars storyline, specifically, the question of why Sidious spared Maul's life. What other uses was he talking about? What dark part of the Emperor's long-term plan did this form? Given the cancellation of Clone Wars on the Cartoon Network, we never found out. Never? No, this is Star Wars, where never is just another word for we'll wrap this up someday in one of our billion other forms of storytelling. That's one hell of an infodump from other Star Wars media, so let's underscore the main movie-related point. When Qi'ra contacts him, Maul has a vast crime syndicate to run, unfinished business with the Emperor, and a desperate need for someone he can trust to help him run things. Oh yeah, and Maul is about to die, one last final, real-time, potentially leaving Qi'ra alone and on a collision course with the Emperor himself. Call it a dark side version of the situation that Obi-Wan left Luke in when he was killed. Hell of a sequel, right? Maul's final act. How do we know Maul is about to exit the picture? Because he returned for the Disney Channel follow-up Rebels. In that series, which is set years after Solo and closer to A New Hope, Maul tries to mentor young Force user Ezra Bridger. He infiltrates Ezra's band of rebels by swearing he hates the Sith and declaring that they need his mad skills to defeat Darth Vader. Of course, Maul's real motivation remains the same, killing Obi-Wan Kenobi. He is merely using Ezra's Force visions to trace Kenobi to his exile on Tatooine. There's one final showdown between the 2 old foes on the planet of the Twin Sunsets, and the outcome is basically the same as in The Phantom Menace. Except a lot quicker, more benign, and more poignant, so the question here is the same one we opened with: where does that leave Qi'ra? In charge of a vast crime syndicate called the Shadow Collective, for one thing. That alone would make a fascinating film, book, comic, but could there be more to it? Does Qi'ra have Sith potential herself? We don't see her displaying any obvious Force sensitivity in Solo, but if there's any in her, and as The Last Jedi taught us, it's in a lot of people, Maul would be the master to tease it out. There are so many ways Qi'ra's career could go at that point, battling the Emperor, interacting with bounty hunters and other assorted scum, graduating to Night Sister, maybe even showing up in the Age of Rey and Kylo Ren looking substantially older. Conveniently, there is a third Star Wars animated series coming up, called Resistance, set in this era. There's another very obvious and dramatically satisfying story possibility: Qi'ra meeting Han again years later and explaining why she ditched him. Perhaps her return forms part of the reason why Han and Leia were estranged in The Force Awakens. Right now all we know for sure is this: the Star Wars mystery box is once again open for business, and the galaxy far, far away has plenty more tales with recurring characters left in it.